Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you managed to take your seats comfortably. We're going to have a very interesting panel. So welcome to the second panel discussion of today, titled Developing a Long-Term View During Uncertain Times. My name is Naida Taso. I am a lead of Renewable Energy Task Force in Energy Community Secretariat. I got a last-minute pleasure to moderate this panel instead of my former colleague Dirk Buchl, who will join us online. So I would like actually to invite all of you to start working on your questions, to prepare the questions for the panelists. I want to make sure that we have interactive discussion and that you also get a chance to ask whatever might be unclear after initial interventions from my panelists. But first, I would like to introduce, of course, the distinguished panelists. We have, as you see, three panelists joining us here physically in Vienna, and also three panelists online. So starting with the male, the only male on the panel, Yurii Kubrushko, I apologize already for my pronunciation, co-founder of IMEPOWER and Green Recovery Fund. Then we have Nadiia Petruchenko, Chief Business Officer, SPP Development Ukraine. We have Victoriia Pysmenna, General Counsel, Elementum Energy. And then, as mentioned, online three panelists. I hope they can hear and see us, and at some point we will see them as well, I presume. So I already mentioned Dirk Buchl. He's a partner at BBH. Olha Ponomarchuk, Head of the Department of International Relations, Ministry of Energy of Ukraine. And Ina Sovsun, member of the Ukrainian Parliament, Parliamentary Energy Committee. As announced, I will now give the floor to all my panelists to provide up to 10 minutes either presentation or the speech about the developments they're working on. So Yurii, I think we start with you to give us a big picture of the current status in renewables in Ukraine.
Okay, thank you. One second, let's wait for presentation. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so first of all, I will say several words about our fund, just to introduce who we are and what we are doing. It's called Green Recovery Fund. We are a private equity fund in the process of fundraising, which has focus on Ukraine's energy sector and logistics. So basically the way how we see focus and priority areas for our investment, first of all, it's energy infrastructure. It's currently planned as a major part of the fund. Here the focus will be on decentralized energy generation, renewable one. But also, just for diversification purposes, we are also looking at biomethane and energy storage. And second area, it's logistics infrastructure. We want to go after, let's say, green, energy efficient logistics, warehouses, intermodal terminals, which enhance trade between Ukraine and Europe. We are planning to work with greenfield projects, teaming up, with operators who can be our strategic partners, those who will build and operate, the facilities, and will join at ready to build stage. We see mission of our fund not only in bringing in, some financing, but we also believe that we can help facilitating implementation of the projects. First of all, by bringing in knowledge of all our funders and partners, how to develop, let's say, internationally bankable projects which are fully compliant with European environmental, social standards, and in general, are structured, in the way that it will be really easy for our partners and us to raise any international financing. And of course, second area where we believe we can bring in, some difference is helping to structure projects in new way. As you know, Ukraine built quite a lot of renewable energy generation based on feed-in tariff system, which is over for any new projects. So now we are basically entering totally like new era where there is a need to build projects based on corporate PPAs, or potentially maybe just taking, also some limited merchant risk. And actually, as we see clearly, Ukrainian consumers, developers, investors, they usually don't have this knowledge and experience, and we believe that here we can play facilitation role, because part of our team are also experienced Polish developers and investors, which did a lot of structuring and financing and construction of wind farms and other renewable projects in Poland over the past 20 years. So we really kind of hope that they will bring, this part also of the experience to Ukraine and help to structure the projects. Just, some high-level picture about current situation. It's just, very simple chart, which shows which capacity we had prior to the invasion and how it looked like, after, several waves of Russian attacks as of beginning of the summer. As you can see, we had, just dramatic reduction of available capacity. 70% of non-nuclear generation was either destroyed or significantly damaged. Part of it is being restored and will go back online. However, unfortunately, we should just, say that missile attacks are not over, and we expect, new waves of attacks during the winter. So that's why, let's say, based on our estimates, whatever will be added to the grid over the next several months most likely will go out again during next waves of attacks, because, these are all centralized generation objects, and they remain easy target. What to do is just really go for building more decentralized, system, adding new capacity. Here on the slide, you can see how Ukrainian transmission system operator sees addition of capacities. It's like 10-year plan. We agree from our side, as, let's say, experts, that it makes perfect sense. Therefore, our strategy basically is aligned with what we see here. First 4 categories, PV, solar, wind farms, biomass, biogas generation, energy storage. That's part of our fund's mandate. And then we have 3 other areas which are important. It's hydro pump storage projects, flexible gas generation, and nuclear. In terms of how we see current situation and bankability and implementation of projects, wind farms currently remain the top priority for private sector investors. We see here most of development, many gigawatts are being developed by Ukrainian developers. This is the area where we see most of interest from private investors as well as from IFIs. As you know, EBRD, IFC, some other IFIs, they are already considering providing financing to first large wind projects, which can get financial closing end of this year or next year. So we fully believe that's the right trend. Wind farms have high wind capture price. They operate with modern technologies, quite significant amount of hours during the year. So that's kind of definitely the priority for Ukraine. For solar, it's a bit more complicated. We see a strong trend for on-site solar installations. Many consumers in Ukraine, go forward, with building some rooftop solar, or if they have spare land, adding, 1-2 megawatts near their facilities. Utility scale solar, let's say, it's possible in general, but it's not, let's say, so easy because of low solar capture prices, and because in general, as you know, Ukraine was quite overbuilt with solar capacity prior to the invasion. We had more than 6.4 gigawatt of utility scale solar, which is mostly still available up and running. while wind was lagging behind, even before the invasion. But now, let's say we have like half gigawatt of operational wind farms which are not occupied and still continue operation. So that's why, like, solar, like, it remains to be seen. Currently, we don't have such projects in our portfolio, but like we are open for future opportunities. Again, mostly in on-site behind the meter installations. Biomass and biogas to electricity. These are really hard projects. They make like perfect sense. If you're an agri company, you have your own waste, you consume your, let's say, self-produced heat, which increases efficiency of such projects significantly. But if you are just like outside investor, coming to the market and trying to build biomass, you run into headaches, how to source it, how to guarantee it for long term. If you go for biogas, it's not competitive really with natural gas. It's more headache to get to the same basic result. So we see that everybody goes for biomethane. That's like obvious normal choice. With biomethane, you can structure bankable projects because you can get potentially offtake. After Ukraine, hopefully this year, starts exporting biomethane to European countries. Long-term contracts with European traders, can serve as a reliable basis to get financing for the projects. So we are quite positive in terms of biomethane perspectives. Gas generation, as you know, currently its highest priority. We saw, the slide of Mr. Shurakov in the first session, how many gas engines are currently being installed in Ukraine. We believe that's like natural and positive trend. Like more gas is available in Ukraine, easier it will be for the system, easier it will be also to absorb and balance renewables going forward. So, like, I think the only question which I have at the moment is really what would be the ultimate scale of gas turbine and gas piston engine additions. Because as far as I understand right now, we are like in this really like active stage because IFIs are helping Ukraine Energy Support Fund, UN organizations, USAID, everybody is buying shipping gas engines. Active municipalities are running tenders. State companies like Ukrzaliznytsia, Ukrnafta, everybody is going after this, like, these projects. But like the question to me, what will happen after that, right? Because these are like all companies and all donors which would provide their support, which would lead, reach some limits, and where we would be after that. Will it be like 1.5 gigawatt, 2 gigawatt, 3 gigawatt, and how much time it will take in real life. So that's why kind of this is the area which remains as a big question mark, how quickly and how much Ukraine will be able to get gas generation. For hydro projects, these are all great projects, but like, they anyway will be done and are being done by state utility, by Ukr So we don't really see much opportunities for private investors there. So it's standalone. And nuclear, these are really, in our opinion, long-term projects. It will take 10 years, plus minus for, new units to be built and added to the system. So that's why kind of we really believe that for short-term and medium-term planning, this capacity is not very relevant. And this is the last slide. This is like the snapshot of the current sector trends that we see. First is, as we discussed before, it's decentralized energy system. And here, like, we should also remember that decentralized covers many different aspects. Decentralized are, let's say, wind farms from the point of view of not being easy targets for potential Russian missile hits. It's not so easy to target them, and that's why we had quite positive experience so far in Ukraine. There were no really attacks against existing, wind farms. So security-wise, it's also can be considered as decentralized generation. Then any 5, 10, 20, 30 megawatt gas, solar, biomass, wind projects connected to the grid. It's also decentralized energy, but also on-site installations of different types. It's also decentralized. So again, with all trends, with all developments are good ones, but we just kind of need to understand every moment of time which area particularly we're talking about, because these are very specific, like different areas with different risks and different financing mechanisms. Renewables, will be clear trend going forward, like, simply because we have lost, so much capacity that it makes perfect sense to develop renewables in combination, with gas. Flexibility is important aspect, but I believe again, we have quite good chance of getting there with all gas projects, with Ukrhydroenergo's projects, as well as with battery energy storage, which is already under construction based on the auctions which Ukrainian TSO conducted. On-site generation, is important trend, which, speaking frankly, needs to be carefully monitored going forward, because currently, when everybody goes after energy security considerations and invests in on-site generation, is good for the country, is good for the consumers, is good for security. However, I am more like financing guy looking ahead. I anticipate that it can create problems going forward for financing of utility scale projects, because on-site generation, if it's going to develop on mass scale, will mean that a lot of consumers will be disappearing from the grid. They will be disappearing from the market. Market can become less liquid. TSO and DSOs, distribution system operators, will have less volumes of electricity transferred via their networks, while their costs for maintenance of the network, will remain the same. So, grid tariffs will need to go up. That will also, spiral, the reasons why the consumers will decide to opt out, because own generation is not only the chance to be energy independent, but it's also a chance to save money by not paying, grid tariffs. So again, unfortunately, from what I see right now, nobody thinks and nobody talks about these issues. But I believe this needs to be carefully planned, not only by the government, but also by investors and by IFIs and those who are financing projects, because it's something which is not felt right now, but 3-4 years from now, I believe that will be quite important topic for everybody to consider and to manage. Networks will need to be properly developed and rebuilt to provide stable basis for this decentralized renewable/gas generation. And of course, when we talk about replacement or reconstruction of damaged or destroyed combined heat and power plants, we really need to take into account efficient solutions at the level of the cities, how to make system more efficient, how to take into account, for the needs of heat customers. And we believe here, it's huge opportunity to really, do, this build back better, approach, and make sure that at CHP and municipal level, we have very energy efficient modern solutions. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yurii, for providing this quite detailed overview of the current status and the trends. If everyone agrees, I will continue using the first names to avoid the wrong pronunciation of your surnames. Now I will give the floor to a colleague who is joining us online, Ina Sovsun from the Parliament. Ina, if you can hear us.
Yes, do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Perfect. The floor is yours.
There's one problem. I can also hear myself. Can someone do something about that?
You can hear yourself.
There's an echo. If you switch off.
We can hear you perfectly, but we will try to check what's happening, if it's on our side or maybe on your end. Is it still echo?
You can try to mute your own, and then now it's working. Okay.
Perfect.
That's really annoying. Good morning to you all today. To you all, I'm sorry I'm not there with you live, but I'm in Parliament right now. We do have a session, and one of the bills that I developed is to be discussed tomorrow. So I unfortunately had to stay, and I'm not able to participate live. I also, because the session is ongoing, I didn't hear all the previous speeches on the referring to the last part of Yurii's speech. I'm aware that I might be repeating some of the things which have already been said, but I will try to do my best to present the debates, not even so much the positions, but rather the debates taking place on the political level in that investigation in the energy sector, and what are the approaches that are being discussed as solutions to the ongoing problems, to the best of my ability. So on the one hand, we recognize that as of right now, the market development prospects have become increasingly uncertain in Ukraine. Because alongside the ongoing war and continuous attacks on the energy system, we are facing also some very concerning trends in the energy policy process. Recent abrupt changes, such as the reshuffling at the regulator and the dismissal of local and they all suggest a trend towards consolidating key executive decisions within a small group of people who are not necessarily very open to discussions, or very open to the decision-making process. Will this latest decisions improve collaboration with the key stakeholders, especially the private sector? Well, that is concerning right now, because we are concerned that with this uncertain developments in the policy, that market confidence will decrease even further, and it will not attract investments, which are very badly needed in the situation that they're in right now. We also understand, and I'm talking to many people here in Kyiv, that the international partners, they are afraid to rely upon decision makers here in Ukraine and energy sector because of all those decisions that have been made recently. And amid invest affairs which have already been sparked by the war, this high level of uncertainty in the government management of the processes, it does pose significant obstacles to the growth in the sector. Additionally, we recognize that there is also a problem with unpredictability in the legislative and regulatory frameworks. Predictability is crucial for supporting investment decisions, and unfortunately, we are still in the process of creating this predictability, so to speak. Because the situation as we are seeing it right now is very contradictory. Because on the one hand, we do need to build gigawatts of new capacity and decentralized generation in a very short period of time. Are there investors who are ready right now? Well, let's say very few. But at the same time, the government is not necessarily sending the right messages, because we are talking about decentralized energy, and at the same time, and everybody's talking about that, and at the same time, the Ministry of Energy, the government, the president himself are talking about the need to build additional nuclear power units, which will most likely be funded by billions of the public money, which we clearly do not have, and of course, this does pose questions as to what is it exactly that Ukraine wants to achieve, because you can't want to achieve different things at the same time. You either build nuclear power blocks, or you build a decentralized energy system. Those are two different objectives. We cannot be working on both of them, so I can understand how that poses, increases uncertainty on the side of the investors as to whether to deal with the Ukrainian energy sector overall. On the other hand, the truth is that with the sharp electricity supply shortages, the need to reduce dependence on imported fuels, given that the cost for solar and wind energy are declining, and because we are seeing the huge consumer interest in self-generation, I do think that overall it does still create a strong foundation for the development of hundreds, if not thousands, of renewables projects in Ukraine. Unfortunately, this does seem to occur in spite rather than due to state policy. However, even at the wartime, around 600 megawatts of green power capacity was commissioned. I think Yurii did mention that briefly. Meanwhile, overall need is even bigger because of the attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure this year. We lost 9 gigawatts of electricity generation, A majority of it require complete rebuild, or rather building in new. Additionally to that, 2 gigawatts of renewable capacity has been occupied, and some of that has also been destroyed, as we understand, because we have seen what the Russian army leaves behind, and they keep very little intact once they occupy the territory. So overall, and that is supported by the calculations of Buchle and Naida, in order to achieve cheaper and more resilient power system, we will need 8 gigawatts of new renewable capacity and 1 gigawatt of storages. So in order to achieve this resilient, decentralized energy system, we do need significantly more new projects and investors. And it wouldn't be fair to say that the government or the parliament is not doing anything to support those investors. Last year we passed a bill in the parliament which does change some aspects of renewables management. The new instruments which were introduced by the parliament, by the law, include the market premiums, net billing, flexible transitions between the free market and the feed-in tariff. Those are all positive steps forward. We have to admit that the reality is still far from what is prescribed, what is written in the legislation, and the market premium mechanism is still not working as it needs to be working, and there are strong solutions that need to be made. But the mechanisms are at least there, and they do show that there is a general understanding that this is the direction we should be taking. But of course, it should be supplemented by other steps that need to be taken, and there are discussions about that, no decisions as of yet, especially about the most significant element of the solution package that we need to take, namely the adequate price signals, which are formed of fair competition rather than decisions of officials or large players. That is something that we still need to be working on. We need to shift away from price regulations and cost subsidies, and there should be a transparent, stable policy and regulation regarding pricing for all the participants. So that is still an issue, that is still a challenge, but we really hope that they will be addressed, at least as I promised at the beginning. I'm talking about the discussions that are taking place, not necessarily the solutions. So the discussion is there, but unfortunately not what the solutions are. And the same goes for addressing the problems with the balancing market. Again, that is another problem which is being discussed, but as of yet no solution has been found. But again, the discussion is very lively. And apart from that, there is another element of why I am, despite everything, hopeful that we will in the right direction, and that is the integration of Ukraine into the EU, because it does have a strong element, a significant element regarding energy policy, integration of Ukrainian electricity system to the EU market. It is crucial both because it is part of the EU integration bill overall, but I also think that implementing those regulations will actually enhance our energy security. So in order to implement the clean energy package, we for some time now, for over a year, I guess now, there were different debates about how to implement that. The bill to implement some elements of the clean energy package have been recently registered in Parliament. It does include the nomination, market coupling, and some other technical issues. We very much hope that this first step will be made pretty soon, and then we will proceed it further into integrating other elements of the EU regulations into Ukrainian legislation as well. So given that the deadlines for that are very specific, they're set for, well, we have about a year and a half to implement all of that, and then given that this part of the job Ukrainian Parliament actually does well, I very much hope that most of the EU regulations will actually be adopted as part of the Ukrainian legislation, and they will, despite all the problems I mentioned in the beginning, that they will actually work to ensure predictability and transparency in the energy policy in Ukraine, and that will, after all, attract investors. But we very badly need in Ukraine right now. So the need is there. There are people who are willing to help as much as we can. I'm always willing to help myself. Anastasia, Yurii, they have my contacts, and I'm always willing to help in any way possible as a member of parliament. Now, so I'm still hopeful despite everything, and I very much hope that despite all of those problems, the investors will see Ukraine as a huge market, not just as a charity case, and that together, based on those principles of transparency, we will rebuild the Ukrainian energy sector. Thank you very much. I'm sorry again for not being there live.
Thank you very much, Ina. I hope you can hear the applause we're giving you. Thank you very much for the inspiring words, and thank you very much for taking time on your break during the parliamentary session to join us. I will just ask maybe quickly one question if Ina is still there, because maybe we will not have opportunity afterwards. You mentioned that discussions are ongoing to support the transposition of clean energy package, including electricity integration. Package. You mentioned also the green transformation law, which was adopted last year, which set the basis for many aspects when it comes to renewables. Maybe you can just briefly share with us if there are some ongoing initiatives or something new that we can expect related to the implementation of renewables and to finalization of transposition of Renewable Energy Directive.
Apart from the bill that I did mention about the transposition of the clean energy package, there is no other legislation in development, something that would be ready to be submitted to the parliament. There are some ideas which are being discussed, but I can't say that they're ready for registration in the parliament. So I suggest that at this point, just follow up on what is happening with this bill. The primary author is Nadiia Petruchenko, and there are multiple other MPs who joined there. So that is the main bill. If you do have any suggestions as to how to improve that, or if you see some other problems that urgently need to be dealt with, maybe that can be done with the scope of that bill. Because the reality of how the committee functions, we don't pass that many bills. We try to squeeze in as many kind of problems that need to be solved into one bill. So I suggest you keep in touch on what is going on with that legislation, and then we will see if we can expand it additionally if there is a need.
Great, thank you very much. We will do that. I think we have now next speaker. Thank you, Ina, very much. I hope you will be able to follow a bit discussion, and we will get back to you afterwards. So now I would like to invite Olha from the Energy Ministry in Ukraine, who is also joining us online to provide her opening remarks.
Dear colleagues, partners, I hope that you hear me okay. Really, I heard a lot of valuable information from previous speakers, and in my speech I do not want to repeat, but sorry if I do so. So I will focus on the main state policy aspects as in my intervention. As for now, we have got more than 1,000 attacks on energy infrastructure since the year 2022. This includes 900 strikes on substations and power lines, more than 200 attacks on generation facilities, and 20 attacks on gas facilities. Of course, these daily attacks cause damage or complete destruction of energy facilities, and currently we can say about loss of more than half of our generation facilities. It is also worth noting that during the last massive attacks, which took place on August 26th, there were damaged many critical substations for providing energy from the nuclear facilities, and it really posed a big threat for Ukrainian nuclear safety. As a result, nearly 1 million of consumers consumers were left without power. And afterwards, it caused emergency shutdowns, impacting of more than 6 million people. In response to all these challenges, the Ukrainian policy consists of the following. Of course, it is the strengthening of facility protections. So this includes air defense and the passive protection for substations. It's repairing damaged infrastructure. It is expanding distributed generation, and it is providing the critical generators for all the regions. For the winter 2024-2025, Ukrainian energy companies need urgent support for their restoration efforts. And currently, the distributed generation projects with total capacity of 1 gigawatt are under development. In the meantime, currently there is a need of 114 million euros for another 228 megawatts of capacity, and 120 million euro for leasing two floating power plants with capacity of 230 megawatts. But such solution can quickly enhance our power supply. Despite these repairs and new projects, we of course expect that there can be energy deficit in our energy system, and it is crucial to increase the import. Maybe 1 hour ago, I have heard happy news that Ukraine and EU agreed on the increase in the import to 2.2 gigawatts of electricity. In all these efforts, and we of course rely on the significant support of our international partners. We highly appreciate the efficient operation and activity of our Energy Support Fund. Since its launching, it accumulated more than 700,000 million euros, and significant portions of these contributions were allocated for distributed generation. It included cogeneration units and gas turbines, which are located and spread all over Ukraine. From the beginning of the war, we also received more than 1,500 shipments and 20,000 tons of very crucial energy humanitarian aid. And it included important equipment such as transformers and generators. This support was provided by more than 36 countries. There was already said a lot about the importance of decentralization of our energy sector by the previous speakers, and the Ministry also highlights its importance because the war has underscored the vulnerabilities of the centralized energy system, which is reliant on large power facilities. And of course, in order to mitigate future risks, it is important to build a network of small capacity energy facilities. And the Ministry of Energy of Ukraine supports decentralized energy by developing tools that enable communities, industries, and businesses to install additional capacities to meet all their local needs. This decentralization is central to Ukraine's energy strategy, which was presented last year and which promotes smart grids, distributed generation, and increased renewable energy integration. Despite all challenges as of mid 2024, we had 9.8% of renewables in our national energy balance, and hope that this figure will rise. Moreover, the National Renewable Energy Action Plan envisages increasing the share of renewables to 27% till 2030. It means that the current RES facilities, which count 10 gigawatts, have to be doubled during the next 5 years. And it is important that this year Ukraine cabinet approved the renewable energy quotas and scheduled the country's first auctions for renewable energy projects. The first online auction is scheduled for October 31st. It will be followed by further auctions for 88 megawatts in wind power and 11 megawatts for other renewable sources like biomass and biogas. We hope that this initiative will offer investors guaranteed state support, accelerating renewable energy development. I would also like to note that last week there was held the 28th Council of IRENA, and in the framework of this event, it was announced the allocation of 2 million euros with coordination of UNEP for building of additional 30 megawatts of solar capacities in Ukraine. So it can be like a successful case of our Ukrainian cooperation with IRENA. It is worth noting that the Ministry and the IRENA also developed a concept of new instrument also to facilitate the attraction of financing for renewable energy. It is called the Ukraine Green Energy Transition Program. Currently, it is under negotiations, but we hope that in some months we will be able to announce practical results. Of course, we believe that our joint efforts, including the creating the regulatory framework and engaging stakeholders, will promote the strong contribution to our renewable energy development and to increasing energy resilience of Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olha, for your intervention and the detailed information. We from Energy Community Secretariat, of course, are also happy that we can contribute to our fund, where we collected more, as you mentioned, more than 700 million euro to support Ukraine in the time of crisis. Olha, as you mentioned, the destructions are enormous, and there's more than ever need for new renewables capacities. I will now give the floor to our next online speaker, Dirk. I hope you are with us and you can hear us. And I will ask you to provide us with a bit of information what Ukraine can do to boost private investments in renewables.
Thanks a lot, Naida, and good morning to everyone in Vienna. I have maybe bad news to start with. I will not be visible. I had a perfect testing with camera, but somehow my camera got kicked out. But I hope you can hear me well, and this may be more sounding like a podcast than a video intervention, but in the end it's the content that matters. And despite I have been changing jobs recently, I am still with the Ukrainian notion of building back better, because we've been talking about this already in all of the previous interventions. What I believe building back better means is that we have sustainable investments in the Ukrainian renewable sector in particular. And sustainable means eventually self-sustainable, so that we will not only rely on the various means of support which are currently available from international organizations, but that there is an attractive environment that convinces investors. And now, even during the war, under the severe conditions and the severe risk perceived by the war, will attract investors to Ukraine and not to other places in the world. And for this, of course, we have been discussing over the last couple of years and of legacy issues that still need to be addressed. And we've been hearing today about them, for instance, by Sovsun, who is working really tirelessly on the improvement and the further development of the legislative framework for renewables in Ukraine. Despite all that, despite the integration into the European market that's coming up, I think we still have a lot of work to do to reform the market across all the segments and get the price signals right from these segments. So that does not only mean that renewable energy participates in all the segments of the market on equal footing, but also is participating as a part of a true merit order, which should of course be attractive to renewable energies. And we have all the legacy issues there still with regard to the PSOs that need to be reformed, etc. But that is probably something that will indeed benefit from a true European integration, because the standards and norms will set maybe more powerfully by all the bodies in charge of a European market than if it's left to a Ukrainian market and the governance of that market alone. I think also, and we heard from Olga about the upcoming auctions. That's of course a very good thing. Auctions are indeed needed to show that there is the willingness and the means of the Ukrainian government and eventually its population to support more renewables getting built and getting online on the grid as well. But the lessons from the past is that the trust in this kind of support system is still limited. A lot of that has to do with the experience with the guaranteed buyer. I think it is high time that there is a guarantee of the guaranteed buyer's obligations towards renewables, a backstop when we would run again into the same issues that have affected the guaranteed buyer's credibility, bankability. So I think we would need that guarantee, probably from an external source for all the obligations that the guaranteed buyer assume. I also believe we still have to go a step further in tariff reforms. Yurii mentioned, among several things, how important it is also that the grid development needs to keep the pace of the development of decentralized renewables, and probably we'll have to do more here to make sure that the tariffs can reflect these investments, and of course cannot reflect them as, in Europe it is called now, anticipatory investments, but also make sure the tariff remains socially acceptable. So in Germany we're working now on something that's called an amortization account or an amortization fund, where these investments in the grid, but also in ancillary technology like storage, etc., is being pre-financed through a tariff that is supported by a loan. In the German case, this is KfW, the German bank, and would be paid back only later over a longer period of time, so to give time to recoup that investment and not put the think we also have to think more, at least in the long term, maybe not immediately now, because now it is important that consumers, industry, households get any electricity, but in the future probably also more could be done to incentivize and to create the demand for renewable energy on the side of the consumers, be that by quota obligations for the usage, for the buying of renewable energy of whatever type. And what is, I think, one of the most important short-term tasks now to be delivered is what I mentioned in the beginning. If we want to have sustainable investment, if we want to get foreign investors into Ukraine more, I hear from Yurii about his fund, which is, of course, a very important tool. But I think if you put yourself in the shoes of an investor who has the entire world as their playground to invest, and where, unfortunately, the notion of solidarity and charity, which nobody wants to rely anyway, but this is probably coming to an end. And that is a sad reality. As longer as the war takes, it is becoming, from an investor's perspective, also to some extent business as usual. So not only does Ukraine have to go the extra mile to keep itself attractive despite the burden of the war risk, but also we need to probably invest, we need to probably put efforts into providing advice to investors to navigate them through the jungle of what's available in their support, both on the Ukrainian side, but also on the international side in terms of financing, in terms of insurances. Indeed, there are plenty of opportunities, but it is, if you look at it from a helicopter view, and if you compare your options on a global level, it is very hard to see, as from an investor's perspective, why Ukraine makes much more sense than any other jurisdiction. And I think there we need to perceive the advice provided to investors as almost a public service. And that's what we are discussing with the European Union, with a group of partners, and we have also teamed up with the Ministry of Energy and the Ukrainian Parliament for that purpose, how we can influence the risk perception of Ukraine in a positive way for investors that don't necessarily have the times, the needs, the incentive to study the Ukrainian case closer and just stop short at taking a decision to go towards easier jurisdictions. So I think there, indeed, we need, at least for a short period, for the period have a whole menu of jurisdictions at their fingertips. But also, when we speak about sustainable investment, I think we need to make very sure building back better also means we are not doing this in the environment as we used to know it in Ukraine. That means if we speak about decentralized investment, it's not only decentralized renewables, it's also investments by none of the incumbent dominating market players. And for this, an obvious investor group within Ukraine is probably the municipalities. And here in Germany, we have a very good experience with empowering municipalities and their utilities, giving them the right and the possibility for PPPs, for giving concessions, but also to build up and maintain in a viable manner their own utilities, which can engage in anything from district heating to energy communities to building that Ukraine has a lot of capacities, has probably the potential to leapfrog, and that is its digital openness. So if we want to think beyond the classic investments into new capacities, into grids, I think it is also about time to start thinking about aggregation, not only mechanisms, but also the companies who would do that. There is a lot of decentralized solar PVs now being built. There's a lot of storage also on a small scale that's being built and that can benefit from aggregation. We probably can, in the future, also develop more into energy sharing mechanisms and programs where the level of decentralization, the level of independence from grids will further increase. And I think this is another area where right now the groundwork can be done to make sure that Ukraine's future energy system is not only much greener, is not only much more decentralized, but immediately starts at the level where the rest of the EU, the rest of the world is only heading towards, and which will benefit Ukraine in terms of more investments, in terms of smarter usage of these investments, and in terms of coming out of this war with an energy sector, with a transformation sector that is not depending on the same players as it used to be in the past. I stop here and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dirk, for your interesting podcast. I think you mentioned all the aspects of renewables we ever worked on together, and you never failed to keep the attention of the audience. So I have just a very brief follow-up question, because we have two speakers here still waiting to get the floor. You mentioned the project you're working with the European Commission or with the European Union, researchers, investors. Have I understood well, you're trying to navigate the investors? Is it some kind of one-stop shop you're planning to work on, or is it going to be some kind of study with all the steps which investors need to undertake, or the availability of the options for renewables in Ukraine?
Thank you, Naida. Yes, it's the former indeed. We see that, in particular, this situation, an investor finds itself that is a lot of complexity and a huge amount of perceived, actual or only perceived risk on the Ukrainian side, and a lot of possibilities as well for different support. Think of the insurance schemes that are available, and for instance, there's an insurance scheme by the German export agency, which is very much underused, despite it covers essentially all the war risks that you may think of. They need to have this, you can very well call it a one-stop shop of helping them making the decision, because nobody, not many investors will allocate a lot of resources in studying the case of Ukraine if they have so many options worldwide. So in order to allow them to dive deeper into the possibilities and risks in Ukraine and eventually take the decision, yes, it's worth it, I think they need to be provided that service of one-stop shop advice. And I think it's also beneficial for the IFIs and other donors supporting renewables right now, because that will not only be relevant in the design phase or in the phase of taking the investment decision and then making your business plan bankable, but also in the implementation. That's another problem right now, that on the ground, of course, you have a lot of service providers who help you from the perspective of an IFI, for instance, the next payment tranche would be legitimately due or not to do the due diligence in that respect. But again, this may, and that's unfortunate, but that's the way it is, this may require maybe also a level of international expertise and the trust that you get from international experts being involved to help you from an IFI's perspective taking those operational decisions.
Thank you, Dirk. We're looking forward to see the results of that project and to have real life one-stop shop in Ukraine. I will now turn to two speakers here, finally, to hear your opinions. Nadiia, everyone mentioned decentralized solutions as a priority, so I will give you the floor for your opening remarks and to brief us on the options for self-consumption compared to...
Thank you so much.
I think someone has to unmute Vienna.
We are muted, it seems. Okay, do you hear us now, Dirk?
Yes, perfect, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, I will do opening remarks and we can discuss about self-consumption and generation facilities, yeah? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to express my deepest gratitude for the organizers for such an important event. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is Nadiia Petruchenko. I am the co-founder and chief business officer at SPP Development Ukraine. SPP Development Ukraine is Ukrainian energy company. We take pride to be at the heart of Ukrainians' energy transmission way, which we have right now in our country. And we invest in, our investment goes beyond mere project participation. We are investing in the nation's future, aiming to position Ukraine as a pivotal player in Europe's carbon footprint. We are a full-cycle energy company which providing energy solutions from the project development to construction and operation. From the analyzing the technicalities of power supply schemes to forecasting consumption patterns, we ensure our projects are holistic, precise, and designed for the future. We have three focus directions. First is development. Regarding the development, considering our affiliation in all aspects of energy production in Ukraine, we have focused on the battery storage development. In the meantime, we support Ukrainian path to the distributed generation by actively deploying robust solar and wind projects nationwide. And I would like to emphasize that wind and solar projects in Ukraine is not just a new idea, it's a must-have strategy to secure the community where that electricity source. Regarding the EPC, our company currently, despite the ongoing war, we continue development and operation. Currently, we're building more than 45 megawatts generation, and it's not just about power. It's about essential needs. It's about food. It's about healthcare and another essential needs that communities rely on. Regarding the maintenance and services, our another department. When the war escalated in 2022, our first priority was to secure the safety of our people and the uninterrupted operation of over 100 megawatts under our care. And I'm incredibly proud to say that we faced the challenges head-on and emerged stronger. And currently, our company working on the energy sphere in Ukraine deeply, and we are involved in all aspects. This is why we understand that Ukraine right now is a pathway to change our not only energy security, but our landscape and our shift. And we envision that future open by collaboration, open dialogue, and shared objectives. And I hope that our today's discussion and another events which we have right now in Ukraine will be one of the pieces in order to pass the journey successful. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you very much, Nadiia. I will have a follow-up questions, but first I would like to give the floor to Victoriia as well to talk about the new opportunities, trends, and options for renewables.
So let me just tell you a couple of words about our company. Currently, Elementum Energy is the largest renewable energy producers in Ukraine. We own and operate 28 solar farms and also one wind park. And during the last 2 years, we basically concentrated on 2 big projects. First, we managed to complete the second phase of our wind park during the full-scale invasion. It was a hell of a project. It was super complicated. It was super costly. It was risky. It was delayed, but still we managed to commission this second phase despite the ongoing challenges. And probably we can hit the next slide. That was the first focus. And the second focus was to ensure that we take the opportunities that were granted by several regulations relaxation efforts. Today, Sovsun said about the Green Transformation Act, and I can affirm that we benefited from 2 significant legislation changes that allow us to adapt better to ongoing challenges. Could we? Oh, okay, I could. Thank you. So basically, apart from these 2 projects that we realized during these 2 years, currently we have 2 big projects in development. Sometimes I call them 4, because the first wind park in Odessa region, it would be a big asset, and we expected it to be operational under a corporate PPA. We've been working it. We started to work with this park before the full-scale invasion. And the new project, basically 3 wind parks, super decentralized wind energy. And we're also trying to find the best financing and other options to implement it. And hopefully with the hope to start construction next year if everything goes super smoothly. But today, as Naida introduced, I would like to focus on the challenges and the opportunities that we see. Some of them, they were mentioned by the previous speakers. So obvious challenge rests with the logistics and construction, apart from the very idea that it's complicated to construct something during the ongoing invasion, and the additional costs and risks that we need to take over, given that given unavailable technical expertise at the site that is usually proposed and suggested by the wind power manufacturers. We also need to figure out how to actually deliver the components of the wind turbine to the plant, to the site. And we also need to make sure that we coordinate everything very smoothly, because we understand that once there is delay, even with one component, that the cost for the project would rise dramatically. Another issue is teams and talent, I can affirm that we have many staff and uncertainties. It is one of the initiatives that we are seeking support is to ensure that the renewable energy players with sufficient capacity, they can be considered as a critical infrastructure, and they can allow to book 100% of the male employees. We understand that each new project is a time-sensitive matter, and delays are super costly. Therefore, it is really important for us to understand that we can ensure the availability of the skilled personnel at the site, but our plans, and also at the plans of other developers that are planning to start constructing next year. Another obvious challenge is grid and market. So I noted from the presentation of the previous speaker from a Ministry of Energy that there was 900 strikes at the substations. That is a huge number, and we also have no predictability of what would be the next challenges. Currently, what we observe is that there is curtailments. Sometimes they are more frequent because of course, they should be more frequent after the massive attacks. But what we're also concerned about is, since we are concentrating on investing into the projects that wouldn't be selling electricity to the guaranteed buyer is that the curtailments are high compared to the curtailments of renewable energy producers selling electricity under the feed-in tariff. As I said previously, we have several pilot projects, and we try to sell electricity taking the merchant risk. And what we observed that curtailments are much more unpredictable compared to what we have being the member of the balancing group of the guaranteed buyer. And the market is also unpredictable because we have these price floors and price ceilings, and we don't have understanding what would be the long-term strategy of the government in relation to that. So it's kind of tricky for us to figure out how to plan for many years ahead. The last one is rather common sense thing, and I believe that many speakers already covered that. So first, we like one success story. We already have 3 success stories of completing the wind parks during the full-scale invasion, but we still don't have this success story when the project started during the Russian aggression and ended. So I believe that once we have it, it would provide this signal and increase the attractiveness of Ukraine that, as speakers also said, needs to be keep a hold, and many stakeholders need to be concentrated on promoting it. And since that conflict is prolonged, we also understand that there is a higher risk of material adverse changes in regulations. We already very wary of the idea to implement this mandatory fee for under the technical conditions for current projects. This is super expensive, like 10,000 euro for 1 megawatt of capacity. And we believe that such type of the barriers and the initiatives, they might arise in the future. And I really appreciate the efforts of the organizers of this event and many active participants that decided to voice the position of the market. But this is the challenges, but we also have the opportunities. This is a good part of my presentation. So, as I said, there were 2 major developments in regulations. And the first one, it took place in 2022. And it was a sign from the parliament that the country, they want to build a trust with the investors. Because for those who know the situation of Ukrainian renewables, there is the historical debts under the feed-in tariff, so this is not a sustainable model, to borrow the words of Dirk. But in 2022, it became possible to, instead of just staying in the balancing group of the guaranteed buyer and not get paid, to put your long-term PPA on hold and try yourself in the commercial sales. So we ran several pilot projects. We understood that it can work somehow for wind. It works much worse for solar power plants. And but I think that one important aspect of this change is that we understood that the constructive dialogue is possible, so there is no retroactive changes to the regulations, and we basically can adapt, and the government takes steps towards suiting our adaptation. Last year there was Green Transformation Act. I think it was a big development for renewables in Ukraine. It allowed and introduced the concept of switching from the feed-in tariff to the feed-in premium. If somebody of you are interested, just please send me a message, because I have a different presentation, very detailed on that one. What are the cons? What are the pros? Where are we now? So this is the topic that I covered for pretty much each event that I participated this year, but I don't want to focus on it now. So the new opportunity is basically adapting. So what are the team is working right now? Basically what we did once there was this big regulatory change, we tried to increase the amount of expertise in-house for selling renewable energy at the market. And currently we are just trying to find the best balance, because normally when you sell electricity and your renewable energy, you sell it with a discount comparing the day-ahead market prices, because well, you rely on the weather, you are unpredictable, so it comes with a cost. So we're just trying to figure out the perfect mix that can be used for our new projects in development. We are really happy that the work, despite the invasion, the work on integration and harmonization with EU regulations is ongoing. And that there were development not only in renewable energy sector, but basically alignment with EU climate objectives. We like that in many presentations there is this focus on decentralized and renewable energy, but of course we want not only the focus as proclaimed goal, but many practical steps, understanding who would be the green, basically the green advocate for renewables, who can understand the issues that we face, who can be in a constructive dialogue and help us to promote the initiatives that we have. And finally, this year was the year of the launch of the guarantees of origin in Ukraine. For us, this again was a very good sign because from our experience operating the portfolio of renewable energy assets in Ukraine, we understand that for the next projects, we probably want to limit the reliance on the government as much as possible. So when we have several sources of income, apart from selling electricity at the markets or to a party under a corporate PPA or whatever model of sales we decide to pursue, it's important for us to understand that there is another source, and we also looking much forward into further steps when the regulator can certify and pass the audit for guarantees of origin transformation, and we are observing this trend very closely. So the organizers asked me to be optimistic during this presentation, so hopefully we proceed to the next year with the good news that we made a final investment decision and we decided to implement at least 2 big wind projects. If we are super lucky, then maybe 3. And fingers crossed, I think it would be achievement in itself if we start construction of the wind parks to help Ukraine to just make it energy more decentralized next year. Fingers crossed for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria, for being optimistic and providing opportunities besides all the challenges which we heard during today's panel. And thank you for mentioning guarantees of origin, because this is the project really close to my heart, and I'm glad to see that finally the registry in Ukraine is implemented, that guarantees of origin are being issued. And I'm looking forward to continue supporting Ukraine and other countries in the path of the recognition of guarantees of origin in EU, which I believe is also important aspect. So now I know you're all hungry, we are all tired. We have 10 minutes or 12 minutes before the lunch, but this is your opportunity to say something positive, optimistic, or to maybe mention some challenge which we didn't have time to mention, and to ask questions, to use the opportunity that we have this distinguished speakers with us here personally and online, and to ask questions which you might have and you don't have anyone to answer. So is there anyone from the audience? Yes, please. I think I help you with the...
Okay, thank you. I would like to ask a question in relation to the first presentation by Yurii. There was a slide which was quite interesting for me. It was a slide what needs to be invested according to the Ukrenergo, to the transition system operator. And for me it was really astonishing. If you look at the numbers, about 38 billion investment plan, more than half, than 20 billion, is for the nuclear power plants, and 18 billion for all the other sources. And the first question is, if we look then at what is going to be built as a capacity, it was that this 20 billion was for 24 gigawatt. And for 16 gigawatt, all the 18 billion were planned. So this is quite a contrast, and I think there is really a question whether this should not be more a topic of discussion also. whether here the investment priorities are put in the right manner. And relatedly, second also, I think there was only not even 1 billion for battery energy storage systems. And especially I have the impression there is no discussion at all about large grid-connected energy storage systems, like for instance the Hornsdale Power Reserve in Australia, which would be some option, or one option, which should be also considered, especially from the viewpoint of the transmission system operator, because it really helped to stabilize the grid in Australia because of problems having there with droughts and so on. So I think this is also something worth considering. Thank you.
Thank you very much for good question. Let's say the table which was on the slide, it actually represents the modeling of Ukrenergo, how they see, let's say, optimal least cost generation mix going forward. Of course, there is natural limitation to this plan being financing, because just the fact that TSO sees development of capacity in such way does not mean automatically that banks, investors, IFIs share these views. So that's actually the real reality check will come from this side. So if this vision of Ukrenergo is shared by financing institutions, then there is chance to build what is there. If, let's say, they are skeptical about some parts, like I'm skeptical about nuclear, speaking frankly, and if others are skeptical too, then it simply will not be implemented and will be replaced in the energy balance of Ukraine by, let's say, additional capacities from gas generation, wind, solar. So, speaking frankly, nuclear is it's a hard question in general, because it's centralized generation. It can be still target for very, let's say, dramatic missile attacks in case of aggression. Let's say with a highly intensive capex projects, hard to implement, especially in Ukrainian context, with all, let's say, challenges and lack of resources to go after everything in parallel. So, that's really hard part. About storage, I would say that as of now, development of storage in Ukraine is mainly based on provision of ancillary services. If you follow the news, Ukrainian TSO Ukrenergo, they started holding auctions for so-called special auctions with 5-year contracts, for frequency containment reserve, frequency restoration reserve. So basically, the amount of the capacity which they are submitting for these auctions is based on respective calculations approved by NCE. So basically, as Ukraine right now is full-scale member of NCE, FCR and FRR capacities which TSO plans to support developing in Ukraine via these long-term auctions and contracts are the capacities which were approved by NCE as Ukraine's contribution to overall FCR and FRR capacity needed for stable functioning of NCE. Unfortunately, in Ukraine, it's still not feasible to build storage for electricity price arbitrage, because we don't have negative pricing, because we have price caps which are set by the regulator. These price caps were increased over past 2 years to allow normal trade with Central Eastern European countries, and in particular to allow for commercial import of electricity to Ukraine. But at the same time, the spread is still not sufficient to make sure that price arbitrage works for investors. So they just go forward just purely based on ancillary services market. And that's why the capacity which was on the table, it mainly represents current estimates of Ukrenergo needs in FCR and FRR. However, like going forward, we expect that this figure will change, because once situation with war stabilizes in Ukraine and we have growth of consumption, there will be like natural rebound in consumption, in generation, and this will by itself will also mean that NSOE will expect high contribution from Ukraine to European ancillary services provision, and that's why this capacity can increase. But let's say, I would say, any major increase where we would see not just hundreds of megawatts, but gigawatts, it will really come from further development of the market, full phase out of price caps, where electricity will be fully like left to the market.
Thank you, Yurii, and thank you for the question. Someone else from the audience wants to ask something? Yes, please. And please just briefly introduce yourself, and then, if it's okay, ask the question.
Hello, my name is Pierre, and I'm representing IFO, the Danish ECA today. You guys spoke about it, but you definitely not terminated your conversation around the PPAs. And I'm really interested to hear your views on what is the predictability and what's the scenarios for having PPAs in the current scenario.
Let's say in general, PPAs made sense even before the invasion, but especially after the invasion, especially because like right now, like it's natural that with such high deficit, prices in Ukraine for electricity increased, significantly over past, 2.5 years. We were at the levels, let's say, somewhere around like 50-60 euro prior to the invasion, more or less. And now we are like, firmly above 100 euro right now, 130, 140 euro per megawatt hour. And, Ukrainian consumers really finally like realized that electricity is not something which is always available and which is always priced, cheaply. So now there is like natural interest from consumers to go for long-term PPAs, which of course is also preference, for investors and IFIs. However, I would say, we have, first of all, quite big gap in terms of overall education. It's very like new concept and very new scheme for Ukraine. So as we see from all discussions, with investors and consumers, that in general consumers like have very simplistic understanding of the idea, but they underestimate and don't understand the complexity of electricity market and how it works. So when you start basically coming to them, explaining what types of PPAs, PPAs are there, what is, physical delivery is, how to do balancing, what is financial PPA, what are the differences, should they work directly, with wind farm or solar farm or via trader, like, this level already of potential alternative, the pros and contras, it already kind of makes heads blowing up, for consumers. So I truly believe, there is like, quite heavy work to do on our side as investors, as associations, to really somehow simplify, the products, simplify the offering, what potential can be done. So that's kind of one area of focus. Second area, which is really important for dynamics of PPA deployment in Ukraine, I believe it's question of finding this right balance between on-site generation projects, which are crucial now, very important now, and really must have to ensure that electricity consumers, industrial, commercial, have some reliable source of electricity to continue their operations, which is crucial for survival of the country and also just overall livability of Ukraine, if I may say. But at the same time, like right now, I would say over past 4 or 5 months, we see like clear change of focus for not all, but some consumers, that rather than going for PPAs with grid-connected renewables, they would rather try and go after their own generation, some gas engine on site to cover, their basic needs. because, like, you know, with corporate PPAs, you don't get, unfortunately, you know, like as of now, based on current legal and regulatory system, this benefit of uninterrupted supply of electricity. So, like, even if you have, you know, wind farm, like 10 kilometers from your factory, but just the fact that both of you are connected to the grid and you go via the grid, and if there is curtailment for natural reasons because of some emergency or because of some missile attacks, and TSO just limits electricity supply in this node of the grid, the consumer will not get electricity even if power plant, you know, is clearly visible, you know, from the office. And that's, you know, I think one very important aspect which holds back consumers from really going actively after PPAs. That's why, as associations, as our EUA association, as Wind Association, we are trying right now to come up with some alternative solutions, using also guarantees of origin that would provide incentives for off-takers of electricity from newly built renewable power plants and the PPAs, also to get some, let's say, special treatment in terms of uninterrupted supply, that DSOs and TSO will take into account that this consumer signed long-term PPA, that it helps to build wind farm, which is 10 kilometers from there, and therefore it should get some, again, better treatment in terms of priority for disconnection in case of any curtailments or problems with the grid, so something like that. So I would say, you know, I'm a strong believer in PPAs, but, you know, there is like still educational and regulatory work to do to really roll it out on a country-wide basis. Like, you know, it's possible right now to do several PPAs. You know, there are still consumers who are interested, there are investors who will proceed, but like to really make it not 5 or 6, but make it, you know, 20, 30, 40 is still a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Yurii. I actually have this question on my in advance prepared list, so that's why maybe you were so detailed in answering. I think we have plenty questions open, but I would invite now you or Anastasia, I would invite you for a lunch and maybe we continue our discussion over there and you can ask questions, speakers over there. Thank you very much for joining and thank you for the speakers.